All right, I want to start the same question I asked our Arjun Gopal earlier. We have a lot of notable voices out here that believe that this is an overreaction to the stock, and the stock actually has the potential to go positive throughout the trading day. What was your take on the quarter, and do you think the downside move was an overreaction?
Yeah, Frank, I think the stock's up today. And to my point, I think it's really when you look at the guidance, and that's not even factoring in China. I mean, China could be an incremental 2-5 billion. And they this for the first time, Jensen talked about maybe giving a little sneak peek. China revenue could be 50% growth. I mean, that was just eye popping. And I think as investors digest this is a stock that's up, and I think a further validation for the AI revolution as well as Nvidia.
All right, the miss was on data center revenue. It was a very slight miss in all fairness, but it was a miss. How should we read that? I know it doesn't include any China guidance, but the fact that it wasn't a blowout quarter for data center when we continue to see these CapEx investments by the hyperscalers and other companies.
Look, Frank, I view it as noise because, in my view, you got to look at the story with China. You can't look at it excluding China. And I think when you look at this quarter, you look at next quarter, and what I think the most important thing Jensen talked about is the 50 billion, the 50% growth. You know, when you're thinking about what China could be, I mean, you put it all together. This is a story that is actually just going into acceleration mode. So there's nothing here that makes me less bullish. I mean, I actually think you're more bullish as a validation point in terms of what you're seeing without China.
All right, Dan, we know you're one of the biggest bulls when it comes to tech on the street, but there are some other factors here. First, we had a report yesterday that China's trying to triple its chip output. Arjun Gopal mentioned there was a Chinese chip company that saw its profits increase by 4,000%. So there seems to be some rising domestic competition, and the Chinese have also voiced some concerns about security issues with these H20 chips, and also just, I guess, some hurt feelings about some things that the Commerce Secretary had. I mean, aren't these some real issues for this company's ability to sell in China and grow those revenues that they've forecasted? But aren't there some real headwinds along the way?
Yeah, look, no doubt. I mean, Jensen's going to have to play that 10% politician, 90% CEO, the back and forth between DC and Beijing. Look, the biggest chip on this poker table is Nvidia. But it comes down to in China, they want Nvidia chips. It's the only, to me, not just game in town, it is the chip fueling the AI revolution. And I think as you start to see this play out, you're going to see that China market continue to expand massively because they're years ahead relative to any other competitor, including Huawei. And I think that is just the reality as this all plays out. There's going to be a lot of noise. But at the end of the day, the top of that mountain is the godfather of AI, Jensen, NVIDIA.
All right, let's talk about investing right now. It's hard to call this buy in the dip because this stock's run up about 35% since its last earnings, and it's only pulled back right now about 1.75%. But when it comes to Nvidia or even the Nasdaq, again, hard to say buy the dip because the Nasdaq futures are just very slightly in the red. Do you see this as a buying opportunity? And if you thought that the stock was frothy before earnings, isn't it still basically kind of frothy?
Yeah, I mean, to that last point, I actually think it's cheap relative to where I think numbers are going. I think Street's underestimating numbers 25-30% next few years, especially when you factor in China, what ultimately this could look at. And in my view, you combine this with what we saw from the hyperscalers and what we're seeing in terms of overall earnings, what you've seen from Snow, what you've seen from MongoDB. You combine that all, of course, Palantir. This now, the story is playing out. The next phase of AI revolution is playing out. And that's bullish not just for NVIDIA, but for tech. And I think tech stocks rally more into year end.
All right, Dan, I'm going to ask you a tough question, at least for you. Is there any part of the tech landscape that you're seeing weakness in following this report? Like we see CoreWeave up, we see some other stocks just fractionally lower. Is there any part of the AI tech trade that you have questions about following this report related to the data center numbers or anything else?
Look, it's not necessarily on that side, but like when you look at Adobe and you look at software, I mean, this is just further shows like what could be eating their lunch, right? That it's putting more software on the defensive. Salesforce, Adobe, I think Salesforce will actually be able to come out of this strong. But look, I think this just shows this AI arms race is not slowing down. It's accelerating. And there's one person that when he talks, you listen. He's wearing a black leather jacket. His name's Jensen.